Thank you very much for the presentation. What you've ignored, however, is life safety. You've totally ignored life safety issues. We live on a peninsula, I've been told. I thought it was an island. But we live in a remote place. You can get all the trauma hawks in the world, but if they're busy somewhere else, they're not going to be able to evacuate somebody who's had a stroke or a heart attack or have been in a serious car accident. That is a serious issue that no one has really thought of. Somebody suggested to me today that maybe a trauma hawk be stationed on the island. Well, that's never going to happen. But we have that issue. How do we get somebody who is ill, very ill, seriously ill, on the verge of death, off the island to a hospital? You haven't figured that part out. Secondly, we have a very small fire department, and about 80% of their responses are medical responses, not fire responses. We have had, as recently as 8 years ago, a fire at a home not more than 600 yards from the Okeechobee Bridge, which was fully operational. One of our one entire battalion of our fire department was on a medical emergency. We had to divert fire engines from another location, and we had to call in West Palm Beach to assist in the fire, and as a result, the house burned basically to the ground, and a resident died. How do we get a fire engine across a bridge that is congested? How do we get a fire engine to the homes in the north end if we need assistance? You don't have an answer for those things. I think, very simply, what you have to do is stop. Stop construction completely of the new bridge. Go back to the drawing boards and figure out what you're going to do to stabilize the existing bridge. There are ways I'm certain you can do. They may be called Rube Goldberg ways, but there are ways. As far as the Coast Guard is concerned, saving us 2 openings a day is nonsense. Absolute, utter nonsense. I travel the Intercoastal. I've traveled the Intercoastal for many years, from Norfolk to here and back again. And there's a bridge, at least one that I can think of off the top of my head, outside of Norfolk, Virginia. I have to leave where I'm staying at 5:15 in the morning in order to get through by 6:30 because the bridge is closed until 9:30 or 10, and on the way back, it's closed from about 4 to 7. There's no reason why the bridges cannot be closed to the limited amount of traffic that we have using them. I live on the Intercoastal. I see the traffic going back and forth. This, to inconvenience a few hundred boaters a month or a year, is nothing to the 16,000 cars that I heard are going to be inconvenienced by not being able to use the North Bridge. I think that's absolutely. I don't care what you do or who you have to hire, but don't close the bridge. Do not build a new one until you figure out a way to stabilize that beam. And maybe you have to sink concrete barges inside there and put steel jacks up to support the area. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. But you have to find a way to keep that bridge open. It is a true life safety issue. And the consequences are unbelievable. You don't want that while you're sleeping at night, to know that somebody in our town has died because we couldn't get emergency equipment to them. On top of all of that, you talk about traffic management. The residents in this room, I guarantee you, know better how to get through West Palm Beach than anybody else. We all avoid Okeechobee with a passion because the canyons of Okeechobee, Those buildings with multiple entrances onto the street from these apartment buildings, condominium buildings, tie up the traffic more than anything else. It is perhaps one of the worst designed streets that I've ever seen. And I don't care how many cameras you have out there, it's not going to make it any better. It's still congested. With 2 bridges operational, a 40% reduction in capacity, and as I think I recall, 16,000 cars diverted to 2 other bridges with no real plan for emergency equipment, stop construction of this new bridge until you figure out a way to stabilize the old bridge. Thank you.
Would the mayors like to comment? Mayor Muir, West Palm.
I'm Jerry Moyo, and I'm mayor of West Palm Beach. We have been talking with the folks from FDOT for the last week. I have here with me tonight our Director of Public Works and our city engineer, as well as our traffic engineer. And we are prepared to do whatever needs to be done to make sure that the traffic moves smoothly through West Palm Beach. We've talked to our police. We have looked at alternatives. We've looked at ways to perhaps do carpooling, to set aside a spot to park your car. We have trolley that moves around the city. We've looked at ways of using that. We're going to do everything we can to make this work. I understand that the wish is that we not close the bridge, but honestly, I'd rather be safe than be driving on a bridge that's not safe. And I think that if we work together, listen to what you have to say. Mr. Wolf said, you know the traffic best, and I agree with him. You know the traffic best. Tell us where those problems are. Our police will be out there to make sure that you can get through safely. It is a significant concern about emergency vehicles. We have to solve that problem, figure out how we're going to do it, but we need to be in a problem-solving mode here, and we in the city are prepared to do that, to make sure that the experience is as best we can make of a bad situation. Again, we're looking at all alternatives. Everything's on the table. If you have something you want to share with me, please feel free to do that. We are open to considering all possibilities. As I said, would we prefer not to have this happen? Absolutely. But I also know that we need to err on the side of safety. So again, you're welcome to reach out to me if you have some ideas. I would certainly be sharing them with Mr. Wolf. We're going to continue to be meeting on this on a regular basis. We think we have a pretty good idea where the bottlenecks are, and we will be working with the county on the traffic lights, and we'll be having police out there where they need to be. Thank you.
Gail?
Mayor Coniglio.
Do you have responses to anything that she has to say, or do you want me to get my baseball bat out of the closet and go next?
Please proceed.
Good evening, neighbors and West Palm friends. It is with deep sadness that we are here tonight. It will absolutely have a tremendous impact on our lives. Not only on the lives of the residents, but the beachgoers and the visitors and the tourists that use our hotels and our small businesses. It is a tremendous impact, and I wish that I could apologize and make it better. It was last week that I spoke with Regional Director of the Department of Transportation, and we discussed this imminent closing, and my question was, if you can wait a week, can you wait 4 weeks? Can you wait until after Easter? Is it safe until that point? He assured me with confidence that it could be driven, it would be safe, because the last thing we want to do is lose a family minivan as they cross the bridge. What I have done in the last several days is work very closely with all of our partners. It is critical that we work with our sister city, Mayor Moyo in West Palm Beach County. I've worked with their administrators and commission as of today, talked with the Transportation Secretary of the state of Florida, Mr. Prasad, and their team, our senator legislative aides from here, both Senator Nelson and Senator Rubio and Congressman Frankel. They will be our key to the Coast Guard problem. There is no reason in my mind why we cannot close the bridges altogether from 7 to 10 in the morning at rush hour and from 4 to 8 in the afternoon. None. With regard to a bridge opening from between those hours, once a day is plenty. Those are things that we must do. As far as the traffic engineering goes, I'm always suspect of cameras and computers and technology, which is why I have convinced them that boots on the ground are the most important ingredient. As we go forward, we can focus on two potential options. Number one is a floating bridge. We have clearly talked about this. It will solve mode of transportation for both vehicles and boats. So a floating bridge needs to be your number one priority. And secondly, I agree with Mr. Rosso, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Find that solution. Find that bridge. Find that outside the box that allows 3 bridges to allow access for east and west travel until the bridge is completed. There is no excuse for us not to have not only fire safety issues, but the ease of a living family environment. It is inexcusable. So I hope that you will work, number one, on Coast Guard, number 2, on floating bridge, and number 3, on anything you can do to keep that Flagler Bridge viable until you have completed construction. I do not buy into, if we start later, we will end later. It doesn't matter if we have a bridge.
In response to both mayors, we've heard the boots on the ground request, and I'm sure that our partners are going to be putting resources into solving this problem. However, we will be hiring off-duty officers, probably FHP, and putting them on the local streets to assist in the traffic. We're not expecting our partners to produce all the resources, all the boots on the ground. That's a project cost that we expect to bear, and we will do that. We have looked for several months at what we could do without closing this bridge structure, either as a repair. We've also looked at the issue of floating bridge, and Courtney advises me there are 3 possibilities for a floating movable bridge. You can lift it, you can rotate it, or you can swing it aside. All 3 of these require foundation work. Even though they float, you have to have foundation work. That's going to be vibration, that's going to be settlement of the current bridge. And we're so close to 2 inches already, we believe that any work to moor a floating bridge is going to result in failure of the structure.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Mitchell Josephs, and I'm here to represent several healthcare providers on the island of Palm Beach. I've been practicing on the island for the last 21 years. I've been hearing a lot of things about traffic issues, but I'm just going to reiterate a couple of points that has to do with what's literally going to kill people. Children in trauma situations that need to get to hospitals, whether it's epileptic fits on the playground, concussions, lacerations, it's going to be a big issue if they can't be transported quickly to local hospitals. Adults too, in cardiac situations, it may not be Good Sam or the Cleveland Clinic or St. Mary's. They may have to get to JFK for their cardiac units. I lost a very close friend of mine when I was studying in medical and dental school at McGill University in Montreal. He died in his seat right next to me because of a food allergy, and it was during a snowstorm, and medical care wasn't able to get to him fast enough just to stick him with an epinephrine pen to save his life. This situation is going to be like a massive snowstorm every single day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Residents on the island awaiting organ transplant surgery need to get to PBI immediately to board aircraft to get to their transplant centers. Patients from the mainland will not be able to get to the doctor's offices that practice on the island. This situation affects people on both sides of the bridge. In my own practice, we see a lot of people from assisted living facilities, Morse Geriatric Center, and these people rely on medical transport companies. And in treating head and neck infections in our practice and other medical complications in other medical practices on the island, time is very crucial. Hurricanes and police activity are only going to magnify this problem. Hearing the bridge closure will immediately keep people from bothering to live, work, or shop in Palm Beach. This is going to affect retailers, realtors, bankers, and all professional service providers. The solution, as many people have mentioned, is to stop work on the new bridge immediately.
Let me, if I may, just for a moment, the issue of emergency response and emergency transportation has been raised a couple of times, and I think it's a fair question. And some of the things that we are planning on doing right now in response to that is, as part of the network management strategies, we would know where emergency facilities are. We would be able to be in contact with emergency responders. We would be able to override the signal operation to provide green indications to vehicles that are transporting in an emergency situation now. Currently, we're able to do this with ambulances and fire trucks. We would make sure that that's also the case here. I think we would also take a look at the possibility of providing emergency ferry boat system in the event that there were known emergencies that had to get across the intercoastal. This is something that we need to take a look at as well. So this is something that's a bit outside the realm of traffic control, but it's another resource that needs to be looked at. So this is probably not a perfect solution to this, but there are things that are done to facilitate the movement of emergency vehicles, knowing the routes they take, instrumenting those routes to make sure that we can override the signal operation to provide green time as the vehicles are approaching the intersections. That's one thing that we would certainly focus on doing.
My name's Gary. I'm a taxi driver in Palm Beach County. I'm a little crude, a little smarter than the average bear. I've never seen any cop move traffic. The worst thing to move traffic is a cop. Nothing hinders traffic more than a cop. And if you drive up and down Okeechobee Boulevard, the cop's main concern is that the people at the Society of the Four Arts, the Kravis Center, and the Convention Center aren't hesitant, to get out of their parking lot. They don't care about the workers or the emergency services or anything else on the island. They don't want to be interrupted by having to get out of the parking lot after their matinee. If traffic was a problem in Palm Beach, they would stop the parents from parking on Royal Palm Beach to pick up their children and block a major lane of that artery. But Palm Beach doesn't say anything about that. They let them do it. All right? And now, I'm just an average kind of guy. When it went down, you talk about getting on and off the island. A fellow worker of mine picked up a customer at Palm Beach Publix, taking him to the Colony Hotel, cost him $45 and took 75 minutes. Palm Beach ordinances have created the problem that you are existing. The problem that you have with traffic is because you live in Palm Beach. They require the homeowners to keep their land immaculate. But then handicap the landscapers, excuse me, my Anadrilla is group, but handicap the landscapers that they can't get on the island before 8 o'clock, and they have to be off the island by 5. They can't work on the weekends, so everybody's rushing onto the island. Everybody's rushing off. This is Palm Beach's problem, not the bridge. All right. Oh yeah, we don't want to be annoyed with a lawnmower. While you're standing in traffic for an hour and being annoyed, that's your creation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stan Cohen. First of all, a little advice for you, if I may prefer it. It would be very helpful for you guys if you actually served wine during this meeting. The reception would be much kinder. Couple of points I'd like to make. First of all, when we talk about the season doesn't actually affect rush hour because the majority of rush hour traffic is actually working people, whether they're gardeners or whether they're people working in homes or working in Publix. But in effect, the time between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning and likewise in the evening is just as busy in the summer as it is in the season. So you need to take that into account. From an engineering point of view, I'd like to know whether the stress of the bridge actually happens when it actually opens up. And if it wasn't opened up, if it was locked permanently, would it avoid the stresses? It's just an interest. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I'd like an answer to that question. And thirdly, if we find that the bridge is really, really dangerous, if I could have a day's notice, I'd like to get my mother-in-law over. But please don't tell my wife. Thank you.
Very briefly, I expect that the movement of the heavy leaves and the counterweights puts additional stress, but the counterweight in the leaf is designed to be balanced so that it swings fairly easily. It is a factor, but I don't think it's a substantial factor. But also, the Coast Guard back there doesn't think the implication of closing it and leaving it closed is viable. If, in fact, the bridge broke down, closed, we'd have to take it apart and open the channel.
We're moving him and you to the island. He might change his mind.
So it's not viable anyway to permanently close the bridge. I mean, keep the leaves down and close the channel is not a viable option. It's a navigable waterway. It needs to remain open. Okay. Open for traffic, open for intracoastal traffic. It's a different situation. It will remain open to intracoastal traffic. We don't have that option. Sir?
My name is Thierry Beau. I have restaurants on either side of the bridge, and we see the closure of the bridge as something that's going to be tremendously affecting our lives, our business, our employees' lives. Things happen, right? And it's unfortunate. However, without pointing fingers right away, I think I would like to hear a little bit about where the responsibility lies in there. You have a number of teams of very capable engineers. I'm sure there's a lot of study that has been done, but someone made a mistake or someone didn't foresee something. And now is not the time to point fingers. Now is the time to find solutions. But I would really encourage you to really think hard about not closing that bridge and revisiting the copy and examining other strategies, because once it happens and once the effects have happened, once people have lost their jobs, once some businesses have closed, businesses decreased, then there's going to be some finger pointing and it's going to cost money. And I would really suggest that we stop everything we're doing, that we try to do the best we can with the bridge existing and find solutions so that we can go about our lives without having to go through those 18 months. That's all. Yeah.
I'd just like to briefly comment that I'm an engineer. These are engineers. Transsystems, the other consultants that we've brought in, they're engineers. It's our discipline to solve a problem. And none of us expected when we first had settlement and were surprised at the problem that we weren't going to devise a solution that kept the bridge open. We all expected that, and we have worked diligently to make that happen. And our very last recourse was to come to the conclusion that we can't do that. We can't accomplish it. The situation doesn't allow us to do that. The best thing that we can do, the only thing that we can do, is close the bridge. Any additional work, foundations for any solution are going to cause us to close the bridge because it's going to settle further. This is not the conclusion that we wanted. We've worked diligently to avoid that, but it is the conclusion that we've arrived at. Sir?
Yeah, I'm Scott Lewis, one of the guys with the lawnmowers you all are talking about. The 10 days back last November was a catastrophe on the bridge, okay? And our company, measurable, 25 employees, 20 minutes each way extra. That costs my company, if you do this for this year, 12 months, that's $64,000 that you're costing my company. Okay? And I want to know what the state's going to try to do about that. Okay? That's just one small service company in Palm Beach. Now take all the employees that try to go back and forth every day and they're going to be jammed because having people sit in an air-conditioned office in George Webb in this amazing system, they are not going to solve the problem that happens down on Flagler. And when we have the people trying to get over the bridge and it's all jammed up, the boots on the ground is going to be the only real answer that really works. It's a great system the county has, but the eyes on, I'm telling you, when you're talking about, well, we're going to hire more FHP. With all due respect with FHP, my office is 300 feet from the North Bridge. I see those officers in the last couple of months get out of their cars maybe a dozen times a day. An officer sitting in a car is not going to solve the blockage that you're going to have here on Okeechobee. It's a failure. And I do agree, I mean, to me, this is an emergency in the town of Palm Beach. It's going to change lives. And I cannot discount the life safety issue that's brought up. Okay? But in terms of business and the economics of the people living over there, trying to get, if an employee is making $10 an hour working at a store in Worth Avenue, but it takes them an extra hour to get to work and back, and they could get a job in West Palm, they're not being paid for that. They're going to move, and they're going to move their job. You are changing lifestyles. You've said yourself this never happens. This is an emergency, and there are emergency declaration standards that maybe the town might need to look at in terms of getting the governor interested, because this is a major impact on people's lives. And not discounting one bit the life safety issue of someone dying. And I would predict that's going to happen because minutes count when they have a heart attack, and trying to get across Okeechobee Bridge during rush hour is a recipe for disaster. You've already impacted my business. I've given you a real number. You're going to save $1 million probably with the two guys that are on each side of the bridge for the year they don't have to be there. You ought to spend a couple $1 million, give it to the town of Palm Beach to hire extra security folks that are out of the cars at every intersection on both sides of the bridge to try to keep this flowing. Because this is just a choke point that's going to choke off the lives of what's going on across the bridge. And guess what? When it stops in Palm Beach, the tax impact, the sales impact, the business impact is in West Palm and in Palm Beach County. It spreads to this side of the bridge. It's never happened. It's happening now. You really got to do something about this drastic in terms of maintaining the traffic flow. I saw phase 1 and phase 2. I didn't see boots on the ground on either of those phases. That was missing. Okay? Thank you for listening.
My name is Rachel Lawrenson. I'm a resident of Palm Beach and also a representative of the Neighbors Association of Palm Beach. And I would like to say that I was here for those days in November. We weren't really in season. And of the 17,000 cars that you clock crossing that bridge each day, I would imagine that many of those cars are year-round cars, businesses, people coming over to work who can't really leave their landscape trucks on one side of the bridge when they need their trucks to do their work, or their tools if they're doing contracting. So the North Bridge represents the area where most of the residents and people who work live. And so I guess what I would say is that what you have put up there, having lived through that, doesn't seem to me to be really a solution. It's interesting that you can monitor the traffic and know how bad it is, but every single street not just the north-south streets, but the east-west streets with people trying to wiggle their way through and avoid the traffic, were completely locked. And having a policeman there to say, move along when you can't move, it's not just a life-saving issue, which it is. It is not just a business issue, which it is, and there are many businesses will close. It's a resident issue. Do you leave 1 hour early and come back 1 hour late to pick your kids up from school? It doesn't work. And as a member of the NAPB, I would say that we would like to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. We're not trying to criticize you, but we're trying to say that what you've come up with so far are baby steps. You need to come up with more, whether it's a ferry that takes cars, whether it's some kind of portable bridge. I'm not an engineer, I'm not going to pretend to be, but this solution isn't adequate. It will just take us under for a year and a half of absolute round-the-clock gridlock, and it's not acceptable. So we'd like to help you work with finding a better plan. Thank you.
My name is Bill Cooley. I live up in the north end in Palm Beach, and I am one of the stroke victims that the good doctor was talking about. In 2001, I woke up and my whole right side was dead. I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk, and I couldn't use my arm. They got me to the hospital like that, and they gave me the proper drugs, and I managed to survive. I think, much to the chagrin of many in Palm Beach, I might add, I think your whole premise is wrong. You've done a great job here in explaining how you're going to handle the traffic, but that's not what I'm interested in hearing. I want to hear how you're not going to have to handle the traffic, how you're going to fix the bridge. I think you should just throw all this stuff out about cameras and cops and all that stuff and spend your time, like a couple of speakers here said earlier, spend your time on figuring out how to fix the bridge so you don't have to manage the traffic. Because the earlier speaker was correct. If you shut off that bridge, life is going to change in the north end of town, if not the whole part of town, drastically. I mean, it's going to cost people their health and welfare. It's going to cost them money. I mean, it's just something that cannot happen. So don't worry about planning the traffic. Figure out how to make it not have to happen. Thank you.
And my name is Reuben Johnson. I'm also a resident of the north end of Palm Beach. And I well remember those 12 days in November when life really changed. It was horrible. I don't think there was any planning at all at that time. The traffic was unbelievably backed up for hours. If you wanted to get off from the north end, you sat in line somewhere up near St. Edward's Church or further back, and you waited, and nothing happened. So I have very little faith that the traffic control will improve that too much. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. But I want to take the cynical point of view here, and that is that all the people who are making comments and making suggestions, it will come to naught. And the plan which has been outlined here is what's going to happen. That's the cynical point of view, but that probably is a realistic point of view. I heard someone say here that we've had 6 shafts driven of a total of 108. That sounds to me like we're starting from scratch. If we're starting from scratch and the North Bridge cannot be used, I'd be interested in seeing a whole new thinking about that bridge. I may be 2 years too late, but all of a sudden we have a bridge which no longer goes in a straight line beautifully off Royal Poinciana. It's going to make some sort of serpentine way into West Palm Beach, at which point it will enter onto Flagler. That, to me, is a traffic disaster in progress. Right now, we can at least get over Flagler. We're one street further in, and it relieves a lot of congestion, I would think. Moreover, all the events which take place in West Palm Beach, which use Flagler Drive, God knows what's going to happen when Flagler Drive is closed down. We're trying to get across the brand new, spanking new Serpentine North Bridge. Maybe if we're in the situation we're really in redo, only having sunk 6 shafts of 108, sounds like we barely started. Let's put our thinking caps on. If that old bridge is no longer usable, let's design a really nice one which goes straight and flies over North Flagler.
Several people have suggested that we should just step back and redesign everything. And we have you saw the pictures, you saw the analysis. This bridge is barely hanging on now. We believe it's safe to drive on for a few more weeks. We don't believe it's safe for us to back off and let you drive on that distressed bridge for 2 years while we assemble a floating bridge, while we come up with some different plan. That's not a bridge that we want you to be driving on for months. It's not reasonable. We have a plan. We need to proceed. We need to get it fixed as quickly as we can. It's a very distressed bridge.
There's no way to buttress it and do bridges engineers.
We spent several months doing analysis of what we could do, and all of it was going to result in more deterioration of the bridge, more settlement. Because to stabilize it, you have to put in more foundation work. Ma'am?
Right. Yes, it was brought up to you tonight about the 2 condominiums in West Palm Beach, and I don't believe you really responded to that. Is there any idea of anything that you are looking to make any plans of any projection ahead of time to see what the status of those buildings are, and then in between, and then at the end or something?
This is Pete Nissen. He's a consultant engineer employed by DOT to monitor the construction.
Yes, and we have monitored the condos on either side of the west end of the bridge. We continue to do that, and we continue to coordinate with both the condo associations. And there have been no signs of distress whatsoever in either condo.
Have you taken any pictures or anything like that, like you have on the bridges?
Yes, ma'am, and the contractor has as well, and the condo owners themselves have also done the same.
Okay, and in what way are we going to be able to see that status as you go along? In other words, are you going to do any presentation to these 2 condos over there? Because if a bridge is going down, you know,
Right,
you could have even more trouble if you had something else.
We meet with the condos regularly, and we coordinate with them, you know, constantly. So we do talk to them a lot.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Stephanie Bajoklis. I'm the owner of the Tropical Fruit Shop on Royal Point, Siena. And I think I'm the face of all the small businesses in Palm Beach. Everyone knows the economy has been terrible the last few years, and you look at all the empty storefronts all over the country. Any small business that has survived this is hanging on by their fingernails. Closing that bridge is going to be the last nail in the coffin. How do you expect me to keep my business open when people can't get to me, when the traffic is at a total gridlock? The days in November was I cannot tell you the nightmare. How about my employees? You know, I want to be the face that you remember when all these businesses start closing. And not one person that has spoken here tonight has said that they're sorry. Not one person, you know, and it's just, you have no idea the nightmare that this is going to be for the businesses in town, which most of you are my customers. I recognize a lot of the faces here. And a 98-year-old business, my business is 98 years old, and it has the right to make it to 100. You close that bridge, and you think that my business can hang on? Think again, and that would be criminal, because people have shopped in my store for generations. We hear stories, wonderful stories every day about their memories and how fond they are of this store. It's in their hearts. And to do this, do not close the bridge. Hire more competent people who can figure out other ways to make this happen so it doesn't close. I don't buy into all the things that you're saying that these are the only solutions. This is America. We have smart people. We're the best country in the world. We have the best minds in the world. Find them, use them, and fix it. And somebody, please apologize.
Yes, Stephanie is right, and you've heard about all the hardships that you're going to cause. Have you considered the cost to both this town of Palm Beach and to the city of West Palm Beach of all the extra so-called police, fire, whatever is going to be imposed upon us? Don't you think you have an obligation to reimburse us?
We have an obligation to absorb as much of the costs of reacting to this situation as we can, but, excuse me? No, we can't do that. We can't do business impacts. And we're working with the town, we're working with the city, but I have no doubt that our partners will incur some costs that we cannot reimburse.
You're going to get a big bill.
Good evening. My name is Bob Moore, and I'm a former employee of the city of West Palm Beach in the 70s and the town of Palm Beach for 25 years. And I admire all of you that are sitting here tonight because I used to have to sit and listen to it. My old boss, Peter Elwell, is there. And I even got to speak to Karen Marcus a few times, and I see her there. And the mayor is here. And there's one thing been missing in your entire presentation tonight. My job was a building official. Your job is an engineer. You design them, the contractor builds them, and we expedite it as a building official. You have not once addressed anything David Rossow said to you tonight earlier. Your engineers have not stood up, and I know you're an engineer too. You're the front person, and you do a good job. But you haven't addressed the issues of how the alternative to keeping that bridge in place could be done. I hate to remind you, but when Apollo 13 went to the moon, they figured out a way to get it back here, engineers in Houston, Texas. So it's your job. I charge every one of you that hold a certificate and are governed by the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, as building officials are, to take this in your teeth, monitoring the 8 piles that you've done for those condominiums. I hate to see the bill for that. The point is it's your job not to smile at me, not to pacify the people that are here that are trying to save their businesses. Your job is to take 40% of the traffic that you're going to eliminate in and out of the town of Palm Beach. Not just Palm Beach, it's West Palm that comes to Palm Beach too. And figure out a way to keep it moving and keep it going. Mr. Elwell will tell you if he gets up here that when the middle bridge was going to be replaced, the town of Palm Beach worked with the DOT, and this is an absolute fact, and I don't know if you were with them at the time.
Yes, I was.
Then you know that an emergency was declared at a town council meeting by the sitting town council and mayor. That emergency was taken to your home offices. And with that emergency declared, because it was an evacuation route, and so is the North Bridge, a temporary bridge was bought and paid for by the state, installed, and then sold to the city of Tampa afterwards. You can't get by here tonight telling these people that they don't remember these things. That wasn't that long ago. And you didn't finish the middle bridge on time either. So take some time, you engineers. I charge you with being a little more creative than just sitting there and listening and smiling and saying, this crack is a quarter beside it. Hell, it could be a dime, it could be a half a dollar, it could be a silver dollar. Everybody knows the cracks are there. Figure out a way to fix them and ask for some help to do it from your bosses. And tell them that they aren't taking the answers that you're giving. We aren't. Nobody is. And I represent 20 families that live in the town of Palm Beach here tonight. I'm their representative. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Greg Weiss, and I live in the city of West Palm Beach. And I want to review and go back over, and you sort of were a little dismissive about the catastrophic failure of the bridge, that it wasn't going to happen. But I want to know that you actually have a plan to deal with it if it does happen, and how you're going to deal with that. That's number one. If there is that kind of a failure, what's going to happen? What's the plan for that? And then as somebody who drives up through downtown almost every day and coming up through north on Dixie. I mean, we see traffic backs up, and it backs up, you know, and it blocks. They stop and they block Flagler, they block Olive, they block Dixie, and then the combination of the trains as well, and how that's all going to be resolved to try and keep the traffic flowing if, in fact, this does happen. And so I'd like to have answers to those questions if you have them. Thank you.
Okay, the first question. I already ran through how we would try to avoid a catastrophic failure. We would look for early signs after we've closed the bridge, and then quickly take the leaves off and do demolition and dismantling before we actually had bridge parts falling into the intracoastal. So we would try to forestall that. If we fail to forestall that, then we would be out there quickly. The contractor has heavy equipment, and we'd be pulling any debris out of the river.
And how long is the expectation that you'd be able to get that done in?
You know, this is very speculative. I don't know what this catastrophic failure is, how much debris there is. How can I answer that?
I mean, I would just expect, you know, I mean, based on the pictures that you've shown and the potential of the bridge of a collapse, that you would get a collapse out in those center spans out there, and all that would end up in the water, and then of course you're going to close down the navigable waterway as well.
We hope to see additional indications of the bridge's decline and remove the leaves before there is a catastrophic failure.
Okay. And as to the traffic and the traffic backing up and blocking the roadways north-south arteries through the city.
Now you're talking about the city of West Palms here?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I'm not at a point right now to be able to give a lot of specifics as to how this would be done. Which is why we're getting together with the partners to really take a look at, you know, what the volumes are, what the traffic patterns are. The comment was made earlier that we have a lot of bright people in this country. You've got a lot of very good traffic engineers in Palm Beach County, and I think that, you know, you can really look at this as an extraordinary circumstance that, you know, everything is, or nothing is going to be taken off the table as a potential solution here. We could be looking at, you know, making one-way roads two-way. We could be looking at making two-way roads one-way. We could be looking at extensive manual control, some combination of all of that. We're very much aware of the issues with traffic backing up and blocking intersections. This is a significant problem. And I think one of the benefits from being able to visually monitor a system is you can see what's going on before that happens, and ideally you can take action to either prevent it from happening or minimizing the length of time it's going to happen. You know, I'm not going to tell you that this sort of thing is never going to happen, but it's our objective to minimize it and to minimize the impact on that in any way we can.
I mean, you know, with all due respect, I mean, even today, I mean, it happens today. They stop in the middle of the intersection, and it gets blocked, and you know, you can't, you know, north and southbound traffic doesn't transit either.
Yeah.
So,
Well,